Chapter 6404. Shangguan Yingying and Wenziren were also very interested in talismans. The talismans collected by these seniors were often very precious. They had been studying recently. Naturally, the talismans taught by their master were not bad. However, these precious talismans were all treasures. It was good to read more. Mo Yunjue, on the other hand, was reading a book on array formations. Although he usually didn't talk much, the seniors had always praised him, because his hard work was engraved in his bones. He would not be as noisy as Wenziren, saying everything out loud, but his improvement was very astonishing. "Old man, you and I have been fighting for so many years, but we still can't determine the victor. Why don't we compete again this time?" Meng Buchuan suddenly looked at Zhongli Xiaoran. His words were full of fighting spirit. Zhongli Xiaoran raised his eyebrows. "How? Since Di Beichen and Mo Yunjue are both first-class geniuses, why don't we each take them as disciples? When the time comes, let's see who can teach better." As soon as these words came out, Granny Hua and the others looked at Meng Buchuan and Zhongli Xiaoran in surprise. They did not expect him to suddenly propose such an idea. In fact, Zhongli Xiaoran had always been teaching Di Beichen. However, he did not take him as a disciple like them. If today's bet was successful, it would be very beneficial for Di Beichen and Mo Yunjue. After all, these two guys were not weak. As long as they could learn from them, even if they only learned 30% of their skills, they would not need to worry too much when they went to the chaotic immortal domain. "Old man Zhongli, I think this idea is very good. What do you think?" Yu Hong urged. Zhongli Xiaoran frowned and did not immediately answer. "Old man Zhongli, don't tell me you don't dare?" Meng Buchuan raised his head and smiled. "It's okay if you don't dare. Who said I don't dare? Let's compete." "Okay." The wine cups clinked and the two drank. "It's a deal." Seeing this, Granny Hua and the others looked at each other. They felt a little funny. Mo Yunjue and Di Beichen's luck was really good. Not only did they obtain the heavenly bestowed fruit, but they also had a few people who recognized them as their masters. One had to know that there were many people who wanted to become the disciples of these two fellows but failed. Now, this opportunity had fallen directly into their hand. They were really lucky. "Miss needs the blue rainflower? I seem to have picked some of them, but they are in the tent. Do you want to come in and pick some?" A granny looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a smile. "Are you following Granny Hua? I've never seen you before." Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and nodded. "We only started following Granny recently. Since you are one of Granny Hua's people, you can take a look around. Granny Hua sells them at a cheap price." "Thank you, Granny." Bailey Hongzhuang slowly walked into the tent. Along the way, almost everyone was very enthusiastic. There were even people who wanted to introduce her husband, but she rejected them one by one. Now that she had already bought a lot of things, she could go back after buying a few more. She also wanted to look at books on runes and arrays. These things were really helpful. After walking into the tent, there were indeed many immortal herbs. Bailey Hongzhuang saw the blue rain flower that she needed. "Granny, I need these immortal herbs." After picking some immortal herbs, Bailey Hongzhuang turned around and said. Chapter 6405. The moment she felt the danger, Bailey Hongzhuang instinctively dodged. "I didn't expect you to be so quick-witted." The granny's face was no longer as kind as before, it now had a trace of viciousness. "Who exactly are you?" Bailey Hongzhuang's face was solemn. She never expected that someone would attack her in the middle of the abandoned immortal forest's gathering. Most importantly, this was her first time here. Logically speaking, she shouldn't have any enmity with anyone. "You'll find out soon enough." Granny's body was nimble as she swiftly flew over. Bailey Hongzhuang quickly dodged, not daring to stay any longer as she hurriedly flew outside. Just as she turned around, a hand suddenly attacked her from behind. Bang! With a hand chop, Bailey Hongzhuang felt her vision darken. The black-robed man looked at the unconscious Bailey Hongzhuang and turned his head to say, "Thank you very much for this time." As the night deepened, Di Baichen put down the talisman book in his hand as his eyebrows slightly creased. Hongzhuang had only said that she needed to buy some herbs and would look for him very soon. But after so long she still hadn't returned. This was rather strange. "Young man, you're not reading this book anymore?" Di Baichen nodded slightly. "I need to look for my wife. I'll come back later." "All right." As they walked forward, Di Baichen realized that he hadn't seen Bailey Hongzhuang's figure and knew that something was amiss. When Ziren and the rest found out, they were completely dumbfounded. They had strolled around the market for a long time and hadn't encountered any danger. Everyone was very enthusiastic. It was hard to believe that something had happened to Hongzhuang here. "What did you say? Hongzhuang has disappeared?" Granny Hua had originally wanted to tell them about Zhongli Xiaoran and Meng Buchuan wanting to take in a disciple. But when she suddenly heard this, her expression changed. Di Baichen's face was solemn. Hongzhuang said that she was going to the stall in front to buy immortal herbs, but she disappeared afterwards. Zhongli Xiaoran and the others stood up as well, and their expressions became extremely solemn. "Someone actually dares to do such a thing at this fair? Tell me, where is Hongzhuang now?" Granny Hua's expression was serious. Hongzhuang was her disciple. Since someone dared to attack Hongzhuang here, she would definitely not let them off. Di Baichen's heart was already hanging in the air, full of worry. There were many experts in the abandoned immortal forest. When he thought that Hongzhuang might have met with misfortune, his heart ached so much that he could not breathe. Fortunately, Linger and Bai Li Yanche were safe and sound, which at least proved that Hongzhuang was still alive. "It's right ahead." Di Baichen pointed to the front. Granny Hua and the others quickly arrived at the place where the two of them had parted. "Granny Hua, what happened?" When the surrounding people saw Granny Hua and the others, they all asked curiously. "Did you see where my disciple went? She was wearing a white dress and was very pretty." Hearing this, everyone immediately understood. "That lady didn't go to the front to buy herbs after buying herbs from me. She should be at the stall in front. You can go and ask around." Di Baichen and Mo Yunjue quickly rushed to the front and asked what had happened. Finally, everyone's footsteps stopped in front of an empty stall. Chapter 6406. A few days ago. Xianqing Sec's Plum Blossom Peak. Guosheng looked at the crazy Guo Xiaojie in front of him. His eyes were filled with heartache, but he could not hide his anger. "Who is it? Who the hell did this?" "Elder, this person must have set up an illusion to make Guo Xiaojie immerse in it. The scene of the illusion is very scary, beyond what Guo Xiaojie can handle. That's why he became like this. Can we find out who did this?" "No." The man shook his head. "With Guo Xiaojie's current state, there's no way to find out." "What about Chu Huan and the rest?" Guosheng's face was filled with hatred. "They couldn't even protect Xiaojie. They're all missing." Guosheng's expression changed slightly. "It seems that they met someone they can't afford to offend in the abandoned immortal forest. This person must be powerful to be able to set up such an illusion. In my opinion, Chu Huan and the rest are already dead." Hearing that, Guosheng's expression darkened. He looked at the crazy Guo Xiaojie in front of him, unable to hide his pain. "Medicine Master Ji, is there really no way to find out who the enemy is?" Guosheng looked up at Medicine Master Ji. He only had one grandson. Now that he had turned into a retard, his life was completely ruined. Medicine Master Ji looked at Guo Xiaojie with a complicated expression. "There is a way, but I'm afraid you can't handle it." "What is it?" "Soul Search," Medicine Master Ji said in a low voice. "Soul Search. We can find out everything that happened from his memories. However, Guo Xiaojie's life will be in danger." Guosheng was slightly startled. His expression was conflicted and hesitant. "Elder Guo, this method is indeed too cruel. I think we should forget about it." After a while, Guoxing's eyes showed a trace of determination. Let's do it. Elder Guo. Medicine Master Ji was in disbelief. Guoxing closed his eyes. Xiaojie has already become like this. Even if he's alive, he's just a piece of trash. Rather than that, why don't we find the person who harmed him? I'll avenge him. Let's do it. Medicine Master Ji's heart skipped a beat. Normally, Guoxing doted on Guo Xiaojie to the extreme. No matter how ridiculous Guo Xiaojie's actions were, Guoxing would always cover for him. Now that Guo Xiaojie had become a retard, Guoxing was so heartless. It was truly chilling. After the soul search ended, Guoxing saw the two people who had attacked. I thought it was some incredible guy, but it turns out it's just two juniors. How dare they attack my grandson? I want them to die without a burial ground. Guoxing was enraged, and the table was directly turned into powder under his attack. Send someone to capture Chu Huan and the other two traitors. Yes. You're just a few outer sect disciples. How dare you betray Xiaojie at such a critical moment? All of you deserve to die. When Bailey Hongzhuang woke up, she only felt that her body was cold, and a cold aura was spreading from all directions. When she opened her eyes, she found herself in a water prison. Her hands and feet were bound by the chains. She tried to struggle, but found that there was a strange power in the chains. This power was similar to the chain that had locked Xiao Hua up. It could seal a person's aura, and there was no way to break it. Chapter 6407. Master, are you okay? Xiao He looked at Bailey Hongzhuang anxiously, her eyes filled with worry. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head. Xiao He, I'm fine. Xiao He was relieved to see that Bailey Hongzhuang was safe and sound. Why would someone kidnap us out of the blue? Where is this place? Xiao He was confused. This was the first time they saw other people from the abandoned immortal forest. They definitely didn't offend anyone. Master, this place doesn't seem to be the abandoned immortal forest. Xiao He looked around. This was a water prison. The people from the abandoned immortal forest lived in simple places. They wouldn't have spent so much effort to create a water prison. Bailey Hongzhuang was deep in thought. I'm afraid this has something to do with Guo Xiaojie. Guo Xiaojie? Xiao He was stunned. After thinking carefully, she realized who this person was. Didn't we already deal with it? There shouldn't be anyone who knows about it. Bailey Hongzhuang frowned. This is also something I don't understand. Back then, when they told their master about this, their master clearly said that the other party had no way of knowing. How did they know? Could it be that Chu Huan and the others were captured? This chain is made of the same material as the one that controlled Xiao Hua. I'm afraid we're in Xianqing sect. Bailey Hongzhuang's ink-black phoenix eyes shone with wisdom. Her voice also became certain. This meant that she wasn't in the abandoned immortal forest. She was in the immortal region. Why didn't the other party kill her? Many thoughts appeared in her mind. No matter what, now that she was captured, the situation would become very difficult. Most importantly, no one knew that she was here. Even if Beichen and the others wanted to save her, they wouldn't be able to find her. Master, can you try and see if we can break these chains? Xiao He looked hopefully at Bailey Hongzhuang. As long as Master entered the Chaos Ring and came out, the chains should be able to be removed. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head slightly. No, these chains have locked onto one's soul energy. It's impossible to enter the Chaos Ring. As soon as she woke up, she had already tried it. The chains were indeed strange, which meant that they were now in a very passive position. Xiao He's face paled. This was the first time they had encountered such a chain. As such, the situation had become very troublesome. Be careful, someone is coming. Noticing the footsteps outside, Bailey Hongzhuang reminded him. The elder is already up. Bring him to see the elder. Yes. Two cultivators wearing Xianqing sect robes slowly walked into the water prison. After seeing Bailey Hongzhuang wake up, a hint of surprise quietly appeared in their eyes. Even their Xianqing sect's #1 beauty couldn't compare to such a peerless beauty. Why do you think the great elder captured this beauty? Could it be that Guoxiaojie wants to harm innocent women again? You've been in seclusion for the past few days. The news is too slow. Guoxiaojie is already dead. Now that they've captured this woman, she might have something to do with Guoxiaojie's death. For a moment, the two of them looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with eyes full of sympathy. A guy like Guoxiaojie deserved to die. However, since this girl was captured, she must be dead. What a pity. Chapter 6408. Through the conversation between the two of them, Bailey Hongzhuang had already confirmed the fact that she was really in the Xianqing sect. The journey from the location of the gathering to the Xianqing sect was not far. This also meant that she had been unconscious for a long time. She did not know if Beichen and the others knew where she was now. It would not be easy for her to leave this place. Under the escort of the two of them, Bailey Hongzhuang finally arrived at the house on Changmei Peak. Even though she had never been to the Immortal Region, she had some understanding of the situation of the sects in the Immortal Region from her master's introduction. Usually, some elders with higher status would have their own mountain peaks to live alone. This elder Guo's status in the Xianqing sect was indeed not simple. Bang! Bailey Hongzhuang and Xiao He were directly pushed into the door, and then the door closed with a bang. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the closed door and then turned to look forward. A man over 50 years old was standing in front of her. His eyes were filled with murderous intent. The air seemed to have frozen, and a terrifying murderous intent spread in all directions. Bailey Hongzhuang just stood there quietly, thinking about how she could leave this place. The most terrible thing was that the chains were still binding her hands. Without the key, she could not open the chains at all. It would be too obvious if she escaped with such an image. The cultivators in the Immortal Region were all at the Radiant Sun realm or higher. You were the one who killed Xiaojie? Guosheng looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a cold expression, and his voice was as gloomy as water. You are really audacious. His roar was filled with madness and anger. Guosheng's face was as ferocious as a demon's, gloomy and frightening. Pa! The long whip ruthlessly lashed Bailey Hongzhuang's body, and the loud sound brought about a shocking bloody mark. Pa! Pa pa! The long whip ruthlessly lashed Bailey Hongzhuang's body. Even if she tried her best to dodge, it was useless. Guosheng was much stronger than her, so there was no point in dodging. In addition, with the chains, her 5 senses were affected, and her strength was much weaker than before. In a short period of time, her white dress was covered with bloodstains. Wherever the whip passed, the flesh was torn open. Little Black felt a burning pain spread all over his body. Seeing this, he immediately grew bigger and threw himself at Bailey Hongzhuang, blocking the whip. Xiao He. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Xiao He anxiously. This whip should be an immortal equipment, and its grade should not be low. Her body had been tempered by lightning, so normal weapons couldn't hurt her. However, this long whip was able to cut open her flesh with a single swing. It was clear how powerful this long whip was. Master, I'm fine. Xiao He's lips curled into a smile. Her eyes were filled with willingness. Her white fur had been dyed red with blood, but Xiao He insisted on standing in front of Bailey Hongzhuang. Guosheng didn't care. He lashed the man and the beast with his whip again and again. His most beloved grandson had lost his life just like that. This was not enough for him to vent his anger. The sound of the long whip filled the air. Bailey Hongzhuang and Xiao He had fainted at some point in time. Splash! A basin of salt water was splashed onto the woman and the beast. The burning pain immediately woke them up. Every wound felt as if it was on fire and the pain seeped into their bones. I haven't taught you a lesson yet and you dare to faint? Chapter 6409. The long whip kept landing on Bailey Hongzhuang and Xiao He. Bailey Hongzhuang kept looking around. It was obvious that there was no one else here other than Guosheng and them. She was no match for Guosheng. There was nothing she could do other than take the beating. Although the injury was serious, it was obviously not fatal. Therefore, the only thing she could do was to try her best to avoid hitting her vital parts. Guoxing couldn't keep hitting her. If he wanted to vent his anger, he could just kill her. Now that he was torturing her and sparing her life, it was probably because he was unwilling and wanted to attract Beichen and the others. After a while, Guoxing was tired. He grabbed Bailey Hongzhuang's neck with one hand and his eyes were filled with a malicious light. Do you know why I didn't kill you? I want those arrogant fellows to be buried with Xiaojie. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were cold. This is the immortal region. People from the abandoned immortal forest can't come to the immortal region. So what? Guoxing snorted. Isn't that Beichen your husband? Do you think he won't come to save you when something like this happened to you? I've already sent people to wait at the entrance. As soon as they appear, they will be caught. When they are all caught, it will be the time of your death. Despicable! Bailey Hongzhuang cursed. You dared to lay your hands on my grandson. This is not enough to vent the hatred in my heart. Guoxing's right hand gradually closed. Bailey Hongzhuang could feel that his aura was much stronger than theirs. It seemed that this Guoxing was a true immortal. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes turned slightly. She wasn't too worried about the safety of Di Beichen and the others. This time, they were with the four elders. When she disappeared, the four elders must have already known. In addition to what Guoxing said, he should have guessed that Beichen and the others would know that she was in Xianqing sect. Although she didn't know what evidence Guoxing left behind, as long as Beichen knew where she was, he would definitely think of a way. Only when Bailey Hongzhuang was on the verge of death did Guoxing let go of his hand. Men, take her back to the water prison. The two men from before appeared again. When they saw Bailey Hongzhuang covered in blood, they were secretly speechless. They had already guessed that this girl's end would be very miserable, but this kind of torture was too cruel. They might as well just end it. However, they didn't dare to disobey Elder Guo's orders, so they dragged Bailey Hongzhuang away. The severe pain caused Bailey's face was pale, but her heart was unusually calm. Although these superficial wounds were serious, they did not harm his core. The most important thing now was to find a way to open the chains. As long as she could open the chains, she would be able to escape. It was obviously impossible when she was in the water prison, so the only chance was now. The two men beside her were obviously afraid of Guoxing. It was basically impossible to get them to help her open it, so the only way was to steal the key. As Bailey Hongzhuang got closer and closer to the water prison, she could clearly see the appearance of the water prison. There were quite a few disciples guarding outside the water prison. At a glance, there were about 6 people. Including the 2 people beside her, there were 8 people. Chapter 64:10. You've returned. One of the disciples looked at the two familiarly. When his gaze fell upon Bailey Hongzhuang, his eyes filled with sorrow. Elder Guo really has the heart to lay his hands on such a beautiful young lady. She has been beaten to such a state. Elder Guo has always doted on Guo Xiaojie. Now that Guo Xiaojie has died at the hands of this woman, it would be strange if he had a good ending. The crowd shook their heads. Such a beauty, even if she was severely injured, was still breathtaking. Unfortunately, this was a person who was bound to die. That's right, Tianlei, are you lacking in points for this month? I've just heard the news from the resource hall. Your points for this month. Hearing this, the man on Bailey Hongzhuang's left had a change in expression. I've forgotten that it's time to calculate my points again. This won't do. I must make a trip there. As he spoke, the man's figure quickly disappeared without a trace. The disciples all laughed while Bailey Hongzhuang was sent into the water prison by another disciple. As the two of them drew closer to their prison cell, Bailey Hongzhuang and Xiao He looked at each other and a look of mutual understanding flashed across their eyes. Xiao He had been lying on Bailey Hongzhuang's body as if she had fallen into a deep sleep. However, Her two claws nimbly pulled out a medicine bag from Bailey Hongzhuang's chest. The moment the door to the water prison was opened, the poisonous powder instantly floated into the air. The man did not expect this to happen so suddenly. When he finally regained his senses, he felt his vision darken. Bailey Hongzhuang dragged the man into her prison cell before removing the key from his waist. Once the chains were unlocked, Bailey Hongzhuang heaved a sigh of relief. She felt that the feeling of being imprisoned had finally disappeared. "Master, what do we do now?" Xiao He looked nervously at Bailey Hongzhuang. Their powers alone were not enough to break out of here. What's more, they were severely injured. Temporarily hiding in the Chaos Ring was fine, but where was the Chaos Ring? Bailey Hongzhuang took out the healing medicine and fed it to Xiao He before handing the key to Xiao He. "Go and release the others from the water dungeon." The scale of this water prison was not small. Along the way, she noticed that there were many people imprisoned here. Although they didn't know what crime these people had committed, they could only gather everyone's strength in this situation. As long as she could break out of this water prison, she would find a way to sneak out of Xianqing sect. Upon hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Xiao He immediately understood and stood up abruptly. The pain on its body made it grimace. Looking at the unconscious man beside her, Bailey Hongzhuang also felt a little apologetic. This person had no enmity with her, and she did not want to implicate him, but there was no other way. All this time, just in case, she had sewed a very small poison bag into her clothes. Even if someone checked, they would not be able to find it. Bailey Hongzhuang gave the man the antidote and then knocked him out. His life was not in danger. Xiao He's speed was also very fast. In a short period of time, he had opened several prison cells. In the end, he directly threw the key to one of the prisoners. Everyone in the water prison was overjoyed when they saw the door open. They had been locked up for a long time and thought that they would never have the chance to leave this dark place. Who would have thought that they would suddenly have a glimmer of hope? Chapter 64:11. Although there were many of them, each of them was obviously seriously injured. It was obvious that they had been imprisoned in the water prison for a long time. Almost after everyone was released, they didn't say anything at all and immediately rushed out. "Let's rush out. Let's leave this damn place." Looking at the people rushing forward quickly, Bailey Hongzhuang sighed. At this time, these people did not have the slightest idea of discussing a countermeasure. Even if they could break out of the water prison, they could not break out of the Xianqing sect. The restrictions of the sect were not a joke. In addition, the scale of the Xianqing sect was not small. They would probably be caught soon after they rushed out. "Master, let's rush out too," Xiao He said. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. At this moment, she could only rush out. "Once we rush out, the people of the Xianqing sect should soon receive the news and rush over. At that time, I will hide in the Chaos Ring. You will shrink your body and hide in the soil with the Chaos Ring. Do you understand?" "Master, don't worry. I understand," Xiao He replied seriously. "Okay, let's rush out. Outside the water prison. Why do you think Ling Chuan hasn't come out after so long? Could it be that he's really taken a fancy to that girl? Don't joke. How could Ling Chuan have such courage?" Just as the six of them were joking, they suddenly heard a burst of hurried footsteps coming out of the water prison. Then, they saw all the prisoners in the water prison rushing out. "Someone is escaping! Someone is escaping!" The six people's expressions changed and they immediately cried out in alarm. "Quickly close the door. We must not let them escape." The six people looked flustered and quickly closed the door. However, how could the escaping people let them do as they wished? They all quickened their pace and stopped the door from closing. The strength of the six people naturally could not be compared with the strength of more than 20 people. In a short period of time, the door was directly rushed open, and the six people also took a few steps back. "Ling Chuan is probably crazy, right? What on earth did he do in there? Now is not the time to think about this. quickly stop them. Otherwise, once they escape, we will all suffer. Bailey Hongzhuang was in the middle of the group and ran out quickly. The disciples were shocked when they saw that Bailey Hongzhuang was clearly seriously injured but could still run so fast at this moment. As expected of the woman who could kill Guo Xiaojie, she was indeed different from ordinary women. Stop. If you don't stop, then don't blame us for being impolite. The man held a sword in his hand and shouted. However, no one paid any attention. Everyone ran forward as if they had gone crazy. Bang bang bang. The battle suddenly. A chaotic battle ensued. Some of the cultivators were subdued right away, while more of them were still trying to escape. Bailey Hongzhuang took advantage of the chaos to rush forward, gathering all her strength under her feet. The farther she was from this place, the safer she would be. Someone. Soon, Bailey Hongzhuang noticed that there were auras rapidly approaching her from all directions. She immediately hid in the chaos ring. Xiao He quickly shrunk her body and rolled around in the mud. Her white fur was completely covered in mud before she hugged the chaos ring and burrowed into the mud. Chapter 64:12. Bang, bang, bang. The sounds of battle quickly spread and terrifying waves of air swept out. After Xiao He hid the chaos ring deep in the soil, she also hid in the chaos ring. These guys from the immortal region were not weak, and their ability to detect auras was terrifying. Even if she hid here, who knew when her aura would be detected and she would be done for? Not only would their location be exposed, even the secret of the chaos ring would be discovered. Xiao He, how's it going outside? I only know that they've already started fighting, but I don't know what's going on. I don't dare to release my aura. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. I'm afraid that most of those people will be captured, but I don't know if any of them will be lucky enough to escape. She didn't know what kind of people were locked up in the water prison, but based on Elder Guo's appearance, there might be many wronged people inside. If they could escape, it would be a great blessing, but if they couldn't, then they could only accept their fate. Since we've already hidden here, then let's stay here for a while. Bailey Hongzhuang pondered. These 2 days, the entire Xianqing sect will be searching for us. Once we appear, it's very likely that we'll be discovered. After 2 days, when the intensity of the search lessens, we'll try to see if we can escape. Fortunately, she and Xiao He were captured together. With Xiao He's ability to change her size, as long as they were careful, they could take the opportunity to sneak back into the abandoned immortal forest. Yes. Xiao He nodded. Staying here was much better than facing that old man Guosheng. Come, I'll help you bandage your wounds first. Bailey Hongzhuang took out the herbs and waved at Xiao He. In order to protect her, Xiao He's white fur was almost dyed red with blood. Now that it was stained with mud, if it wasn't cleaned up quickly, it would be very troublesome if it got infected. After dealing with her injuries, Bailey Hongzhuang took off her blood-stained clothes and immediately sat down to meditate and heal her injuries. Given their strength, they weren't a match for the cultivators of the immortal realms. Since they still had time, they might as well conserve their combat strength as much as possible. When Guosheng found out that Bailey Hongzhuang had disappeared, he was furious. Today's incident was very strange. Almost at the first moment he heard the news, he felt that this matter was very likely related to Bailey Hongzhuang. Previously, the water prison had been safe and sound. Bailey Hongzhuang had just arrived and something like this had happened. It would be strange if it had nothing to do with her. A bunch of trash. If you can't even keep an eye on one person, what's the use of having you? Ling Chuan and the others knelt on the ground nervously, their faces pale. This disciple has failed in his task. Elder, please punish me. You guys, hurry up and find Bailey Hongzhuang. Guosheng waved his hand, and the anger on his face couldn't be more obvious. As for Ling Chuan, you can go plant rice fields for the time being. Don't appear in front of me again. Ling Chuan's body shook, and his face instantly turned pale. Guarding the water prison was actually a very good job. He had spent a lot of effort to get this job with great difficulty. Now that he had been reprimanded by the elder, not only had he lost this good job, it would be difficult for him to stand out in the future. When he thought of this, his heart was filled with despair. Chapter 64:13. With the help of the seniors, D. Bachin and the others still found the stall owner, who disappeared even though the stall owner fled very quickly. Although the stall owner was unwilling to speak frankly, under the pressure of the seniors, he didn't dare to not tell the truth. He immediately told them everything that had happened before. After listening to all this, D. Bachin and the others' hearts sank. They never thought that all of this was caused by the Xian Qing sect. It seems that this elder Guo is really a ruthless person. Meng Buchuan snorted coldly and a trace of coldness appeared in his eyes. Shangguan Yingying was a little confused. Didn't you say that it's impossible for that elder to know that this matter has something to do with us? Guo Xiaojie must be dead. In order to find you, he even disregarded Guo Xiaojie's life. Zhongli Xiaoran's heart was as clear as a mirror. Although he knew this method, he always thought that his grandfather, who rarely doted on his grandson, would do such a thing. What's more, according to Guo Xiaojie's previous performance, this elder Guo should be extremely doting on him, but he didn't expect the situation to be completely different. Then what should we do now? Bailey Yunyan was anxious. If Hong Zhuang is caught in the immortal domain, how can we go to the immortal domain to save her? At this time, D. Bachin looked at the 5 seniors and bowed deeply. His expression was unprecedentedly serious. Seniors, I hope you can help. He must save Hong Zhuang. However, how to enter the immortal domain was indeed a big problem. Hearing this, Grandma Hua nodded and said, Hong Zhuang is my disciple, I naturally won't let anything happen to her. This elder of the Xian Qing sect, I think he's tired of living. Yu Hong's eyes flashed with a trace of coldness. His face no longer had the usual joking expression. On the contrary, there was a terrible ruthlessness. This expression was very unfamiliar to everyone. It was the first time they saw Senior Yu show such an expression. Bailey Hongzhuang stayed in the Chaos Ring for 3 days in a row. Only then did she consider whether to go outside to take a look. 3 days was enough for the people of the Xian Qing sect to search every place. Xiao He quietly came out of the Chaos Ring. After the hair all over her body was stained with mud, she had completely turned into a ball of mud. No one would notice her lying on the grass. It's strange to say that the woman caught by Elder Guo seemed to have disappeared into thin air. We've searched every corner of the sect, but we couldn't find her figure. It's said that the reason why this happened this time is because of her. Is really not simple. Ling Chuan is miserable. Bailey Hongzhuang narrowed her eyes. Guoxing gave us such a big gift, we have to return it to him no matter what. But Master, we're much weaker than him. Once we're discovered, I'm afraid it'll be very troublesome. Chapter 64:14. The disciples of Xian Qing sect might not be able to notice their presence, but Guoxing might be able to. Let's be careful. I'm afraid that Guoxing is also looking for us. Maybe he's not at his residence. This is a good opportunity for us. Her ink-black phoenix eyes flashed with a fierce light. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, had always been her style of doing things. She had cultivated for so many years, but this was the first time she had encountered such a situation. If she didn't return the favor with a big gift, she wouldn't be able to live with it. Then I'll go that way. Xiao He actually couldn't swallow this anger. That old man was too despicable and shameless. Because they had already been there before, Xiao He still remembered the route clearly. Along the way it was very careful. Once someone passed by, it would immediately stop. During this process, they also learned about the current situation from the discussions of some cultivators. Master, that Elder Guo really doesn't seem to be at Chang Mei Peak. Xiao He sighed in relief. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes turned slightly. He wanted to use us as bait. Now that we've run away, he must be very unwilling. Chapter 64:15. Master, should we go now or wait? Xiao He asked through voice transmission. Let's go into the chaos ring first. We'll come out later. Be careful not to expose our auras. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was grave. Guosheng was not a kind person. After returning, the first thing he would do was to investigate the auras of the surroundings. Once they were discovered, the consequences would be disastrous. Ever since she came into contact with the strange chains, she understood that there were many things in the immortal region that were beyond their knowledge. If she underestimated them, she would be the one consigned to eternal damnation. Xiao He did not dare to delay. After hiding the chaos ring, she disappeared from the spot. Just as Xiao He and Bailey Hongzhuang hid in the ring, several auras appeared on Changmei Peak. Elder Guo, it's strange. We rushed over at a much faster speed that day. Most of the fugitives have been caught. Only Bailey Hongzhuang seems to have disappeared into thin air. Medicine Master Ji's expression was complicated. Logically speaking, she doesn't know anyone in our Xian Qing sect. It shouldn't be possible for a disciple to protect her. Hearing this, Guosheng snorted coldly. The malicious light in his eyes was as dark as the night. I don't know what kind of seductive tricks that bitch used. Perhaps she has already bewitched a disciple. When have we ever heard of such a thing happening in the water prison? I don't know if Lingchuan let her out on purpose. Medicine Master Ji and the two accompanying disciples were silent. They had seen Bailey Hongzhuang's appearance before. If such a beautiful woman used her skills, ordinary disciples would not be able to escape. Then what should we do now? Medicine Master Ji frowned. We've already searched everywhere. We even checked the disciples' residences. There's no trace of her at all. Continue to investigate. Guosheng's expression was fierce. Even if a disciple is protecting her, she will be exposed sooner or later. You two go and send me a message. Before Bailey Hongzhuang is found, the search is not allowed to stop. Yes. The disciple received the order, and then quickly left Changmei Peak as if he had been granted amnesty. Ever since Guoshao Jie had fallen, they had been on tenterhooks by the elder's side every day, deeply afraid that the slightest carelessness might cause them to be punished. After the two of them left, Guosheng asked, "How's the situation at the Immortal Domain's entrance?" "There's still no news at the moment. No matter how fast they investigate, it's impossible for them to arrive so quickly." Guosheng's tone changed as a trace of doubt appeared between his brows. "Elder Guo, why are you so sure that they will definitely come? For an abandoned person to forcefully barge into the immortal region's gates, only death awaits them." Guosheng's eyes narrowed as a ruthless glint flashed across them. Who hasn't done that when they were young? These fellows clearly know that Xiaojie is my grandson, yet they still dare to lay their hands on him. Could it be that they lack courage? Even if they don't dare to barge through the gates of the celestial region, they will definitely be loitering around nearby. This time, as long as they dare to come, I'll make sure they don't return. Hearing this, Medicine Master Ji nodded slightly. I'll keep an eye on the situation outside the immortal region's gate. The moment someone approaches, I'll inform you, Elder. You must be tired these past 2 days. Go in and have a cup of tea first. Guosheng's expression eased a little, and then he smiled faintly. Chaos Ring. Master, if that detestable Elder Guo returns, will he fall into the trap? Chapter 64:16. Master had spent so much effort to set up this trap. Even if Guosheng was extremely powerful, he would still fall for it. After all, poison masters were not people that ordinary people were willing to offend. This was because this method was simply impossible to guard against. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her phoenix eyes. It might take a little while, but the situation should be very exciting. She did not place the poison in the easiest place to be discovered. Instead, she placed it in a place that was not easy to detect. This was based on the reverse thinking that Granny had taught her. Any cultivator who could ascend to the immortal domain would have gone through countless trials and tribulations. They were very experienced in dealing with people. Furthermore, with Guosheng's annoying personality, there would be many people who would want to deal with him on a daily basis. They would definitely be on guard against him. Then will it be safe for us to stay here? Xiao He was a little worried. Should we go somewhere else to hide? No need. Bailey Hongzhuang waved her hand. Her deep and beautiful eyes were filled with wisdom. The most dangerous place is the safest place. Apart from Guosheng and his disciples, there is no one else on Changmei Peak. He is extremely familiar with this place, and will not place too much focus here. The aura of the Chaos Ring is negligible. Moreover, it is hidden in the soil. Guosheng will not be able to find us. The only thing we need to take note of is that we cannot go out too early. Otherwise, if the timing is not right, we will be finished. As she spoke, a trace of helplessness appeared on her delicate and beautiful face. Ever since she started cultivating, she had spent most of her time fighting head-on. There were not many times where she had to hide like this. However, these people were so powerful. Apart from taking the opportunity to launch a sneak attack, she had no other choice. Hearing this, Xiao He nodded slightly. Then we will stay here with peace of mind. Bailey Hongzhuang rebandaged the external injuries and applied some medicine. The effects of the immortal herbs in the immortal domain are indeed extraordinary. Previously, the injuries were so serious. Now, they have recovered by more than half. If they were originally heavily injured, their efficiency would be greatly reduced. However, based on the current situation, their injuries should be more or less healed in just one more day. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang and Xiao He were calmly discussing countermeasures in the Chaos Ring, Changmei Peak of Xianqing sect was extremely lively. Because Changmei Peak had exploded. Since Guosheng began to search for Bailey Hongzhuang in Xianqing sect, even some disciples who were in seclusion were alarmed. Therefore, this period of time could be said to be the most lively days in Xianqing sect. In an instant, everyone felt that the earth was shaking. It was as if the entire Xianqing sect was shaking. Only then did everyone realize that Elder Guo's residence, Changmei Peak, had actually exploded without them noticing. In an instant, Changmei Peak, one of the 13 peaks, was directly shaved off by the explosion. The upper half of the peak was directly razed to the ground. Sand flew everywhere. The bare surface revealed the color of the soil. Where was its usual evergreen appearance? Oh my God! Am I seeing things? Changmei Peak was blown up? What the hell is going on? How did it suddenly become like this? Chapter 64:17. Bailey Hongzhuang was famous. The entire Xianqing sect was alarmed by the explosion of Changmei Peak. When the elders arrived, they saw Guosheng in a sorry state. Where was the sage-like demeanor he usually had? Not only were his clothes tattered, even his beard had been burned off. Dirt and dust fell on his body, staining his clothes with blood. He was in a sorry state. Most importantly, his face was pale and he stood stiffly on the spot, as if he couldn't believe what had just happened. Elder Guo, what's going on? Why did your Changmei Peak explode all of a sudden? Could it be that your enemies are here to seek revenge? Faced with the elder's questions, Guosheng just stood there expressionlessly and didn't answer a single question. With such a big commotion, even the sect master, who was in seclusion, was shocked out of his seclusion. After seeing this scene, he couldn't help but say, Elder Guo, you don't have to hide it anymore. Everyone is concerned about you with good intentions, why don't you answer? Originally, everyone thought that Guosheng didn't want to pay attention to the matter because it was too embarrassing. However, when the sect master took the initiative to ask, Elder Guo still ignored him. This was a little strange. The sect master was displeased and asked Medicine Master Ji, who was in a slightly better situation than the elders. Medicine Master Ji, speak. Medicine Master Ji looked at the sect master and used almost all his strength to squeeze out a word from his teeth. Poison, what did you say? The sect master frowned. Although the scale of the explosion wasn't small, with Elder Guo and Medicine Master Ji's strength, it shouldn't be a big problem. Now that these two fellows looked so strange, what exactly was the problem? The elders at the side were also puzzled. Could it be that there was some secret between Elder Guo and Medicine Master Ji that couldn't be said? Guoxing tried his best to make faces. He was about to go crazy with anger. He never thought that Bailey Hongzhuang would have the guts to come to his Chang Mei Peak at a time like this. At this moment, when he recalled everything that had happened, he only felt that he had fallen into a dream. It was a complete disaster. With his cultivation, how could this ordinary explosion do anything to him? But right before the explosion, he was poisoned. This strange poison caused his body to gradually become numb, greatly reducing his reaction speed. If Apothecary Ji hadn't discovered the poison at the first moment and the two of them hadn't immediately consumed the antidote, they might have really lost their lives by now. However, this poison was no ordinary poison. Medicine Master Ji's antidote could only temporarily save her life, but the numbness was only getting worse. In this short period of time, he was only able to move his eyes. When the sect leader saw Guoxing and Medicine Master Ji's behavior, he was somewhat annoyed. These two fellows were truly audacious. They didn't even listen to his words. Elder Guo, what happened to your eyes? One of the elders looked at Elder Guo in confusion. He felt that Elder Guo was a little too funny. At such a serious moment, Elder Guo began to wink at him. Could it be that he had become as stupid as his grandson? Hearing this, Guoxing was simply about to vomit blood. You idiots! Can't you see that I've been poisoned? After a long while, one of the elders finally realized that this matter was really strange and couldn't help but ask, Sect Master, could Elder Guo and the others have been poisoned? Chapter 64:18. After an alchemist examined Guoxing and Alchemist Ji's condition, he said, reporting to the sect leader, Elder Guo and Alchemist Ji have indeed been poisoned. This poison has a paralyzing effect, so they can't speak at all. Hearing this, everyone suddenly realized and the displeasure in their hearts dissipated a little. Then quickly detoxify Elder Guo and the others. The sect leader sighed. He didn't expect this to be the reason. The dignified Xianqing sect's elders have been reduced to this state. How shameful! Sect leader, this poison is very strange. It's not an ordinary poison. The alchemist looked troubled. I'm afraid I'll need some time to study it. Once these words were spoken, the sect leader and the other elders were once again stunned. Their eyes were filled with astonishment. This poison is actually so complicated? This poison is indeed not simple. It's definitely not the work of an ordinary alchemist. Otherwise, Alchemist Ji wouldn't have been reduced to this state. Everyone looked at each other. This was the truth. Alchemist Ji's medical skills were among the best in the entire sect. Now that he and Elder Guo have been reduced to this state, they can't be underestimated. Sect leader, it seems this matter is not simple. This person has such a method. If Alchemist Ji wasn't here, I'm afraid Elder Guo would have lost his life. What the hell is going on? The sect leader's face was ashen. Who was so arrogant that they dared to come to their sect and commit crimes? They even raised Elder Guo's long plum peak to the ground. This was a slap in the face. Seeing this, the other elders recounted the events that had happened earlier. After knowing that the root of all this was related to Guoxiao Jie, the sect leader frowned. Previously, when Guoxiao Jie was in the sect, he had already turned a blind eye. He didn't think that after Guoxiao Jie's death, something like this would happen. Sect leader, I'm afraid this woman is not simple. The first elder's expression was serious. All the cultivators who escaped from the prison have been captured. Only this woman is missing. We originally thought she had taken the opportunity to escape. We didn't think that not only did she not escape, she even dared to return to Long Plum Peak. If we don't capture her, I'm afraid there will be more trouble. The faces of the other elders also changed. They didn't put a young lady in their eyes at all. However, after today's incident, they realized that the girl's power was beyond their expectations. I give the order to immediately search the sect for this woman. The sect leader said sternly. If such a thing happened in the Xianqing sect, once it spread out, it would simply be a joke to the other sects. Yes. For a time, the entire Xianqing sect was on high alert. The patrolling disciples searched everywhere, and the elders competed with each other. As long as they could find Bailey Hongzhuang, they would be rewarded. In such an environment, everyone seemed to have been injected with chicken blood as they searched everywhere. Once he found it, not only would he be able to obtain a generous reward, he would also be able to gain the recognition of the elders. Perhaps he might even be able to achieve a meteoric rise in his career. At the same time, in private conversations, everyone was full of admiration for Bailey Hongzhuang. I heard that Elder Guo's poison hasn't been cured yet. He's really in trouble this time. Chapter 64:19. As the search grew longer and longer, the discussions became more and more widespread. I heard that this girl came from the abandoned immortal forest and is an abandoned person, but I really admire her methods. The entire sect has been searched, but there is no news of her at all. Do you think she has already left? I heard that there are many cultivators guarding the gate. If she left, it's impossible that no one saw her. For a time, Bailey Hongzhuang had become a mystery in the eyes of the cultivators of the Xianqing sect. From the beginning to the end, they couldn't understand how she did all this. Bailey Hongzhuang and Xiao He simply stayed in the chaos ring for a day. Early the next morning, Xiao He ran out of the chaos ring. Where is this? Xiao He was shocked to find that the place she was at now was not the place where she was hiding yesterday. Xiao He, what's wrong? Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't see the situation outside and could only communicate with Xiao He through voice transmission. Master, we are no longer at the original location. Blackie looked around carefully, only to discover that the original Chang Mei Peak had been razed to the ground at some point, and the chaos ring was mixed in the soil. Bailey Hongzhuang also wanted to know the situation outside. Even though she had changed her appearance to Ling Chuan's, she didn't have the service of a disciple of the Xianqing sect. If she came out like this, she would immediately be suspected. Xiao He hugged the chaos ring and rolled forward. When she saw a cultivator who was alone, she directly drugged him. After Bailey Hongzhuang came out, she directly took off the other party's outer clothes and put them on in the chaos ring. Only then did she walk out openly. Xiao He directly went into Bailey Hongzhuang's arms and looked around vigilantly. Master, the entire Xianqing sect is looking for you now. There are also layers of guards in front of the gate. I'm afraid it will be very difficult to get out. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. She was also aware of this situation. If she wanted to escape, she would have to find an opportunity. At this moment, a voice suddenly sounded from behind her. Who is it? Bailey Hongzhuang's expression suddenly changed. She slowly turned around and saw an unfamiliar Xianqing sect disciple. When the man saw Bailey Hongzhuang, he smiled and said, Ling Chuan, why are you here? Seeing that the other party did not recognize her, Bailey Hongzhuang breathed a sigh of relief and said, I just came here to take a look. Do you know how Elder Guo is? You don't know. The man was a little surprised, but then he smiled and said, Although you've been punished to work in the spirit fields recently, you're still too out of touch with the news. The poison that Elder Guo was poisoned with this time is not simple. All the pharmacists in the sect are discussing countermeasures together. I don't know the final result. The man put one hand on Bailey Hongzhuang's body and had a mysterious smile on his face. By the way, tell me honestly, did you deliberately let Bailey Hongzhuang leave that day? How could it be on purpose? Bailey Hongzhuang quickly said, I was poisoned. The man nodded in understanding. So that's the case. I heard that the girl was extremely beautiful. I thought you were confused by her, so you deliberately let her go. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's lips twitched slightly. These guys' imagination was really amazing. They even came up with such a reason. Chapter 64:20. Speaking of which, it's strange. I really don't understand how that woman did all this. So many of us have been looking for her everywhere, but we haven't been able to find any trace of her. The man frowned. The rewards given by the elders are very generous. If we can find her, perhaps even the sect master will reward us. You're now being punished to plant in the spirit field. If you can find that woman, then you'll definitely be able to atone for your crimes. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly with a serious expression on her face. I've made up my mind to find her. Otherwise, I don't know how long I'll have to stay in the spirit field. The man smiled faintly. Good luck. However, his expression clearly showed that he didn't think Ling Chuan would be able to find her. It wasn't until the man left that Bailey Hongzhuang understood the situation of the Xianqing sect. I didn't expect Guosheng's luck to be so good. He actually didn't die. Bailey Hongzhuang frowned slightly. Her previous plan was already very perfect, but she didn't expect Medicine Master Ji to appear. This Medicine Master Ji's ability was also very good. As a medicine master, he was almost instinctively aware of the existence of the poison, which was why he took the antidote pill immediately. Master, no matter what, we've taken back the interest. Xiao Hei's eyes revealed a trace of relief. Although she couldn't directly kill Guosheng, she could still vent her anger by making him become like this. Guosheng must be furious now. He's an elder of the main peak. Now that the main peak has been directly blown up, he can't even say a word. Haha. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. As an elder, face was also extremely important. This matter caused Guosheng to lose all face, and he had already become a joke among the group of elders. Just from the man's description, it could be understood that because of this matter, everyone's trust in Guosheng was greatly reduced. It seemed that even the sect master felt that this matter was extremely embarrassing. This Guosheng is not a good person. Over the years, who knows how many people have been abused by him. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her phoenix eyes slightly. I don't think this guy's popularity is very good. The others are probably waiting to be laughed at. Master, can they cure the poison? Xiao Hei was a little curious. Initially, it did not know how strong its master's poison was. However, after such a long time, the poison on Guosheng and the others had not been neutralized. It seemed that its master's poison was not that easy to neutralize. Bailey Hongzhuang pondered and shook her head. I'm not too sure, but from this point, I can see that Granny's medical skills are much better than theirs. Her mother-in-law was an expert in many kinds of poisons. The poison she used this time was only one of the poisons that her mother-in-law had taught her. There were many other poisons that she had yet to learn how to concoct. On one hand, it was because his current cultivation was not high enough. On the other hand, it was also because the place where they lived did not have the required poisonous herbs, so it was not equipped. If she had brought that poison with her when she came out this time, Guosheng would probably have become a ghost by now. Now, the entire Xianqing sect is looking for us. Even the elders are alarmed. We should stay here for the time being. It won't be too late for us to leave after this storm has passed. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes flashed with a serious light. Although this matter was mainly about Guosheng's face, in fact, the entire Xianqing sect had lost face. Chapter 64:21. After deciding not to leave for the time being, Bailey Hongzhuang and Xiao Hei slowly walked forward. With Ling Chuan's identity, no one would notice them. The effect of the illusory grass was still very good. They wouldn't be discovered for a while. Xiao Hei, let's just find a place where there are no people and stay for a while. Bailey Hongzhuang looked around. The reason why she wandered around with Ling Chuan's face was to understand the situation here. This was the first time she had come into contact with the sects in the immortal region. After observing, she found that the sects in the immortal region were not much different from the upper realm or even the lower realm. However, many things here were of a higher level. It was obvious that they were of a higher level than the upper realm. Master, why don't we go to the spirit field to take a look? Xiao Hei's eyes lit up. Because of Ling Chuan, they had already heard of the spirit field several times. What exactly was planted in the spirit field? Master, do we still need to farm in this sect? Xiao Hei was in disbelief. Even in the lower realm, although cultivators had to take on some chores, no one would do this kind of farming. When it thought that cultivators who ascended to the immortal region actually had to farm, it felt a little unbelievable. Bailey Hongzhuang's phoenix-like eyes raised slightly. She was actually a little curious about this. She had never been to the immortal region before. Granny Hua and the others ate very casually. The rice they ate now was all bought from the upper realm. The rice planted by immortal cultivators should be different, right? Since you're interested, then let's go take a look. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. Xiao Hei nodded excitedly. Okay. Originally, the human and beast were still a little confused about the environment of the Xianqing sect. However, Ling Chuan's recent actions were too eye-catching. Therefore, whenever she appeared, there would always be people lamenting about her experience. Therefore, in a few words, Bailey Hongzhuang also clearly knew where the spirit field was. She even almost chatted with someone along the way. Fortunately, the people who traveled with her were not planting spirit field. After a certain distance, they separated. Master, look. That's the spiritual field. Xiao Hei looked at the paddy fields in front of her, and her eyes were filled with shock. Large tracts of paddy fields were now showing signs of ripening. The golden ears of wheat were plump and full, looking very tempting. Bailey Hongzhuang sized up the ears of wheat in front of her. She only needed to sense a little before she realized that there was something different about this ear of wheat. This was because the ears of wheat were filled with spiritual energy. No wonder it's called a spiritual field. These rice paddies are all irrigated with spiritual energy. Bailey Hongzhuang had a look of understanding on her face, and she was looking forward to it. The immortal region was indeed different. Even this rice was completely different. Xiao Hei swallowed her saliva greedily. Then the rice must taste really good. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. After eating this rice, it should be able to increase the strength of the cultivator. No wonder they are called immortals. This rice is no longer an ordinary item. If I have the chance, I really want to try it. Xiao Hei's face was filled with anticipation. This kind of rice, not only it, but its master and the others had also never tasted it. If we can bring this rice back, Granny Hua and the others will definitely be very happy. Noticing Xiao Hei's eager gaze, Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head slightly and said, "That won't do." Chapter 64-22. Now that Ling Chuan was assigned to guard the spirit field, if the spirit rice was lost, it would be very difficult for Ling Chuan to gain a foothold in the Xianqing sect. Hearing this, Xiao Hei's face immediately collapsed and a strong sense of helplessness appeared on her face. It wasn't easy to see such a unique treasure, but she could only look at it and not eat it. It was too depressing. We can see if there's anything good in other places. If there's something you're interested in, we can also collect some interest. Since Guosheng captured them here, they naturally couldn't leave so easily. No matter what, they had to leave Guosheng an unforgettable gift. In any case, all the losses they caused now would fall on Guosheng's head. It was rare for them to come to the immortal region, so they had to bring back something interesting. Guosheng didn't expect that the bait he caught would be such a master who wanted to see the world in chaos. If he knew earlier, he would rather not take revenge than capture Bailey Hongzhuang. Unfortunately, there was no medicine for regret in this world. No matter how regretful he was, it was useless. Bailey Hongzhuang and Xiao Hei walked forward and found that in addition to rice, there were also fruits and vegetables. Unsurprisingly, these fruits and vegetables were all irrigated with spirit qi and emitted a charming fragrance. At a glance, they only felt that it was completely different from the fruits and vegetables they usually came into contact with. The aura emitted by it was very similar to the heavenly treasures they usually saw. Although the aura of these fruits and vegetables was slightly weaker, they were just the most ordinary food. It was really surprising that there was such a change. If these weren't fruits and vegetables, but some real medicinal treasures, then the effect should be very amazing. At this moment, Bailey Hongzhuang finally understood why there were so many heavenly treasures in the immortal region. It was because the heavenly treasures here were not only naturally grown, but also artificially grown. Master, eating these things should be very beneficial, right? Xiao He asked curiously. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a playful smile. Although I don't know what effect it has, since it grew in this kind of spirit qi, there must be an effect. Master, then Xiao He's eyes narrowed as he smiled. His eyes were filled with craftiness. Bailey Hongzhuang's phoenix eyes narrowed slightly. The human and beast's expressions were surprisingly similar. Normally, we don't have many ingredients. Now that we've seen so many, how can we waste them? Now that almost all the cultivators were looking for Bailey Hongzhuang, no one thought that she would hide here. After observing for a while, she found that there was no one else here at all. This was obviously a great opportunity. The man and the beast immediately began to move. Bailey Hongzhuang was mainly in charge of plucking, while Xiao He was in charge of keeping watch. However, when she was on the lookout, Xiao He would also pick some of them. When she saw some fruits that she liked, she immediately stuffed them into her mouth. As soon as she ate them, Xiao He's eyes lit up, and a blissful expression appeared on her face. Master, this taste is very delicious. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled. You glutton, watch carefully. Don't let anyone discover you. Chapter 64-23. Bailey Hongzhuang walked along this road and found that there were quite a lot of things planted by the Xianqing sect. Therefore, the human and beast directly put away the good things they saw. Master, these fellows are really interesting. They all ran outside to surround you like a swarm of bees. When they come back and see this scene, it will definitely be very interesting. Xiao He looked at the bare tree trunks behind them, and her eyes were full of smiles. However, they didn't pick all of them. They only picked some ripe ones. As for the unripe ones, they didn't waste them. This planting work must be the task of the outer sect disciples. These disciples usually receive the least cultivation resources. As long as they catch me, not only will they receive generous rewards, but they will also be rewarded by the elders. They might even be able to become inner sect disciples. If it were you, what would you do? Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows slightly. Her eyes had already explained everything. Xiao He nodded. Indeed, it's rare to have such an opportunity to soar to the sky. No one will give it up. However, none of them would have thought that we would be here. Speaking of which, this Xianqing sect's resource room must have a lot of treasures. Bailey Hongzhuang fell into deep thought. The resource room of every sect must have a lot of precious treasures. Moreover, this was a sect in the immortal realm. Although the Xianqing sect's level wasn't high among the many sects in the immortal realm and could only be said to be a small sect, it must have a lot of resources. Xiao He was stunned and couldn't help but open her mouth wide. She said in disbelief, Master, you're not thinking of robbing the resource room, are you? Her master was too bold. It seemed that she still couldn't compare to her master. Indeed, I have this idea. Bailey Hongzhuang thought seriously. Right now, the entire Xianqing sect is in chaos. However, the guard of the resource room has always been the strictest. I'm afraid it won't be easy for us to rob it. Even if these elders were alarmed, no one would expect them to have the idea of running to the resource room. However, the people in the resource room shouldn't have left. If we can really bring back all the things in the resource room, that would be great. Xiao He's eyes were filled with anticipation. However, Master, we have to think about this in the long run. Just based on what they were doing now, the entire Xian Qing sect would definitely be angered to death by them. Once they were discovered, their fate would be worse than falling into Guosheng's hands. I understand. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was calm. At least, we have to ensure that we won't appear in the same place as him. Otherwise, we will really be exposed. Thinking of this, the man and the beast picked all the fruits in the field and slowly returned to the spirit field. The area of this spirit field is not small, so Ling Chuan shouldn't be the only one looking after it. We can look around and see if he's there. Bailey Hongzhuang looked around. With a glance, she found several residences. Little Black slipped into the house like a wisp of smoke. Originally, it thought that it would be very difficult to confirm the identity of the disciples, but it did not expect that the door plate actually had the name of each disciple and the spiritual field they belonged to. In this way, it became very easy to find Ling Chuan. Chapter 64-24. Looking at the words Ling Chuan written on the door plate, Xiao He found that there was no aura inside, so she simply sneaked into the house to take a look. Ling Chuan was really not inside. It seems that Ling Chuan should have gone out to look for opportunities, as Master said. After Bailey Hongzhuang heard Xiao Hei's answer, she couldn't help but frown. In this way, we can't determine the location of Ling Chuan. Master, why don't we just stay here and wait for Ling Chuan to come back? Xiao Hei asked. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. We can only do this for now. I hope he can come back soon. Otherwise, once someone finds out that the spiritual field here is lost, the guard of the resource room will become much stricter, and we won't be able to do anything. Xiao Hei's eyes dimmed a little. If she didn't have the chance to do such an interesting thing, it would indeed be a pity. However, Bailey Hongzhuang and Xiao Hei's luck was obviously good. It didn't take long for Ling Chuan to return. After noticing that Ling Chuan returned to the house and didn't come out for a while, Xiao Hei informed Bailey Hongzhuang. I think Ling Chuan looks quite disappointed. He probably won't go out again today. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes lit up slightly, and the corners of her lips raised a sly smile. In that case, let's go to the resource room to take a look. The location of the Xianqing sect's resource room was not difficult to find. Bailey Hongzhuang spent a little time to find it. Even though many disciples were looking for her now, there were still a lot of people in the resource room, and they were shuttling back and forth. Master, there are so many people here, I'm afraid it's not easy for us to do it. Xiao Hei looked around. Wanting to do something to the resource room under the eyes of so many people was simply courting death. Don't worry, let's look around now. Bailey Hongzhuang was calm. No matter when, the resource room was always the most lively place in the sect. She had already expected this to happen, but she would have to think of a way to deal with it after she understood the situation. As there were many cultivators heading to the resource room, Bailey Hongzhuang's appearance did not attract much attention. She wandered around inside. What she was interested in was not the resources of each disciple, but the natural treasures that could be exchanged with points. These things were often the most precious. Even if they couldn't take much, it would definitely be beneficial to everyone's strength. As she wandered around, many cultivators would come here to check the points required for the items they wanted to exchange. However, most of them could only sigh at their inadequacy. Apart from a few extremely outstanding disciples, it was not easy for others to gather enough points. After understanding the situation in the resource room, Bailey Hongzhuang came up with a plan. The effect of the disguise pill changed. Bailey Hongzhuang changed into the face of one of the cultivators he had seen before. Then, she quickly ran towards the front of the resource room. Everyone present could easily tell that he was in a state of extreme urgency. Noticing her actions, a cultivator who knew her couldn't help but ask, "What are you going to do in such a hurry?" Bailey Hongzhuang stopped. There was a trace of panic and nervousness on her face. She smiled and said, "Nothing, I just found that I left something behind, so I have to go back to get it." Chapter 64-25. Bailey Hongzhuang was slightly stunned. She scratched her head and said, "I was wrong. I left the things over there. I still have to look for it. I won't say more." As soon as her voice fell, Bailey Hongzhuang didn't seem to want to delay for a second. She rushed forward in a hurry. On the one hand, she didn't want to be discovered by everyone. On the other hand, she couldn't wait to be perfectly presented by her. As Bailey Hongzhuang left, the disciple couldn't help but follow. The surrounding cultivators who noticed this scene felt that this matter was a bit strange. They didn't dare to delay and quickly rushed forward, afraid that they would miss some good news. "Do you think he heard some news? I won't believe such a lame reason like leaving something behind. Now everyone is looking for Bailey Hongzhuang. I heard that as long as you can find Bailey Hongzhuang, you can become an inner disciple. Could he be? No matter what it is, I'll follow and take a look first." Once the crowd effect was produced, many disciples hurriedly followed, afraid that they would miss it if they were late. Some cultivators who didn't understand what was going on also followed after seeing this scene. With such a big movement, something must have happened. Just as a group of cultivators rushed out, Xiao Hei took the opportunity to stuff the resources in the resource room into her Qiankuan bag. Master is really smart. She actually came up with this method to attract others away. Even the elder in the resource room couldn't help but go and take a look. Xiao Hei was secretly delighted. Usually, no matter what happened, the elder in the resource room would not leave. It was just that the commotion caused by her master was too big, so even the elder couldn't help but go and take a look. Now, almost everyone in the Xianqing sect wanted to see the real face of Bailey Hongzhuang. They wanted to know how an abandoned person could cause such a big trouble in the Xianqing sect. Xiao Hei's movements were very fast. Her master had already told her before she left. Although this method could attract a certain number of people away, it wouldn't attract them for too long. It wouldn't be long before these people came back. Therefore, he couldn't be greedy. He should pick up the good stuff and stop while he was ahead. Xiao Hei also understood that this matter was not a joke. Therefore, she quickly put some precious heavenly treasures into her Qiankuan bag and quickly left the resource room. Not long after Xiao Hei left, the elder returned to the resource room. Xiao Hei quietly heaved a sigh of relief when it sensed the terrifying aura. Fortunately, it had left in time. Otherwise, with this elder's ability, it was very likely that he would have discovered its existence. Bailey Hongzhuang tried her best to put some distance between herself and the person behind her. Only then did she find a corner and change back to Ling Chuan's face. While the other party wasn't paying attention, she slowly walked back to the spirit field. Previously, she and Xiao Hei had already agreed to meet at the spirit field. Moreover, she was wearing Ling Chuan's face, so it was normal for her to appear here. However, as Bailey Hongzhuang waited longer and longer, she could not help but frown. Why isn't Xiao Hei back yet? Could it be that she was too greedy and was discovered? When she thought of this possibility, her heart sank. Before she left, she had already reminded Xiao Hei not to be greedy. She felt that Xiao Hei had realized the seriousness of the matter and shouldn't be so greedy. Chapter 64-26. Bailey Hongzhuang quickly rushed in the direction of the resource room. Her heart was getting more and more anxious. Once Xiao Hei fell into the hands of the Xianqing sect, it would be really bad. Guoxing didn't kill them directly because he wanted to lure Beichen and the others here. However, the other elders and even the sect leader didn't have such scruples. Perhaps they would directly take Xiao Hei's life. "Master, let's go." Bailey Hongzhuang walked all the way and noticed that Xiao Hei's aura was getting closer and closer to her. Suddenly, her heart was filled with joy. Then, she noticed Xiao Hei's aura. However, behind Xiao Hei, there was a terrifying aura that was rapidly approaching. "He has locked onto my aura. He will be here soon." Xiao Hei's voice was hurried as she said nervously. Bailey Hongzhuang waved her hand and immediately put Xiao Hei into the Chaos Ring. As a divine artifact, the Chaos Ring's ability to hide one's aura could be said to be extremely terrifying. She believed that even the elders of the Xianqing sect wouldn't be able to distinguish it. She still remembered that she had asked her grandmother before. Her grandmother also praised the Chaos Ring. She said that the Chaos Ring was stronger than most immortal artifacts. As long as one hid inside, most people wouldn't be able to find their hidden aura. After Elder Duan returned to the resource room, the first thing he found was that some of the precious treasures inside had disappeared. When he discovered this, he suddenly felt a chill down his spine. He had been guarding the resource room for so many years, and such a thing had never happened. He had only left for a short while, and such a thing had happened. After thinking about it for a moment, he realized that the previous situation was completely a diversion to the east and attack in the west. The reason why Bailey Hongzhuang was able to deceive so many people was because she could disguise herself. Elder Duan quickly understood the problem. It was absolutely impossible for such a big living person to disappear into thin air in the Xianqing sect. The reason why they hadn't found Bailey Hongzhuang for so long was that she was mixed in with so many disciples. If that was the case, things would be troublesome. There were countless disciples in the entire Xianqing sect. There were 13 peaks of the Xianqing sect, and there were many disciples under each peak. Bailey Hongzhuang could have changed into any one of them. Even if they checked in front, Bailey Hongzhuang could have changed into someone else later. This was really a big problem. Elder Duan quickly walked out of the resource room, and his aura spread out, and he had only left for a short period of time. And even if Bailey Hongzhuang's speed was fast, it was impossible for her to disappear into the surroundings. Therefore, Elder Duan quickly scanned the auras in the surroundings. Finally, his aura locked onto a demon beast. According to the water prison disciple, Bailey Hongzhuang was caught together with her contract beast. Although many disciples had their own contracted beasts, the fact that this contracted beast appeared near the resource room and its owner was not by its side was very suspicious. After Bailey Hongzhuang put Xiao He into the Chaos Ring, she turned around and walked forward. She could feel the other party's aura approaching quickly. However, if she disappeared now, the other party would definitely dig 3 feet into the ground to check for any abnormalities in the vicinity. Once she did this, the Chaos Ring was very likely to be discovered. So even if it was extremely dangerous, she could only give it a try. Chapter 64-27. Elder Duan had rushed over as soon as he had locked onto Xiao Hei's aura. However, just as he was getting closer to Xiao He, he realized that the aura had disappeared into thin air. Elder Duan could not help but feel shocked when he realized this. A look of astonishment flashed across his face. Regardless of whether it was a human or a contracted beast, their aura could not possibly disappear into thin air. However, no matter how hard he tried to sense it, he could not sense that the other party's aura had really disappeared. How could this be? Elder Duan carried his suspicions as he quickly made his way to the spot where Xiao Hei's aura had disappeared. Everything around him looked normal, and there was nothing out of the ordinary. Could it be that there's some kind of treasure that can conceal one's aura perfectly? A thought flashed across his mind, but he did not have time to think about it in detail. He quickly began to survey his surroundings. If this little fellow was really Bailey Hongzhuang's contracted beast, it must be here to meet up with its master. The fact that the contracted beast's aura had disappeared here meant that its master was most likely nearby. Bailey Hongzhuang walked towards the spirit field at a normal speed. She was so nervous that she could hear her own heartbeat. She could sense the aura scanning her from behind. Even though her heart was extremely nervous, her expression remained very calm. She must appear calm at a time like this. She must not give herself away at all. Otherwise, once she is discovered, she would be consigned to eternal damnation. Elder Duan scanned the auras around him. When he realized that the contracted beast's aura was nowhere to be found, he frowned. If he could use this opportunity to capture Bailey Hongzhuang, it would be a great achievement for him. However, if he could not capture the other party, he would have to bear the consequences of losing the item. This would cause him to lose face as well. This Guoxing really knows how to stir up trouble. Since we've captured him, we should have just dealt with him. Why did he have to stir up trouble like this? How troublesome! Elder Duan's face was full of misfortune, and he could not help but feel gloomy. Just then, Elder Duan sensed an aura not too far away, and a sense of suspicion appeared in his eyes. Ling Chuan. Bailey Hongzhuang froze when she heard the voice behind her. She didn't expect to be discovered. She slowly turned her head and pretended to be surprised. She respectfully bowed and said, "Greetings, Elder Duan." Elder Duan nodded slightly and carefully looked at Ling Chuan, as if trying to find some clues from his expression. "Ling Chuan, why are you here?" Replying to Elder, "I made a huge mistake and was punished to plant the spiritual field. Just now, I heard that someone had found traces of Bailey Hongzhuang. I rushed over, thinking that if I could catch her, then I would be able to atone for my crime. But when I went there, I didn't find any trace of Bailey Hongzhuang, so I came back." Hearing this, Elder Duan nodded slightly. This explanation was quite reasonable. Bailey Hongzhuang stood quietly on the spot. She could feel Elder Duan's aura constantly scanning her, as if he was trying to see through her disguise. Sweat slowly seeped out of her palms as she prepared herself to run away at any time. She did not know if Elder Duan would discover her. If he did, she must seize the opportunity to escape as quickly as possible. Perhaps she would still have a chance of survival. Chapter 64-28. Elder Duan could not see anything unusual about Ling Chuan's face. Ling Chuan was Guo Xing's disciple to begin with, so he was not very familiar with him. If it had not been for the fact that this incident had blown up, he would not have even heard of Ling Chuan's name. Therefore, he could not determine whether this was the real Ling Chuan by observing his face. If this person was really Ling Chuan, would he not become a laughingstock if he were to capture him? He does not want to embarrass himself like Guo Xing. "Are you planning to go back?" Elder Duan asked without batting an eyelid. Bailey Hongzhuang gently nodded. "Yes, Elder Duan. Coincidentally, I was thinking of taking a look at the spirit farm. I'll go with you." Elder Duan smiled and followed beside Bailey Hongzhuang. Clearly, he had no intention of leaving. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's expression changed slightly. It was obvious that Elder Duan's suspicions had not disappeared and he still wanted to observe her properly. If she bumped into Ling Chuan along the way, it would be no different from being caught red-handed. By then, she would not be able to escape even if she wanted to. Furthermore, Elder Duan was right next to her. If she dared to run away, it would be no different from exposing her identity. Hence, the only thing she could do now was to pray that Ling Chuan would stay in the house, and that they would not bump into each other. Even though countless thoughts flashed across Bailey Hongzhuang's heart anxiously, she pretended as if nothing had happened. She wanted to pretend that she was the real Ling Chuan, and she must not reveal any clues. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly followed Elder Duan, but realized that the latter had slowed down on purpose, as if he was following her. Instantly, she understood that Elder Duan was testing her to see if she knew the location of the spirit farm. After all, an outsider cultivator might not know the location. However, Bailey Hongzhuang happened to have been to the spirit farm before, so this was not a problem for her. Elder Duan watched as Bailey Hongzhuang walked towards the spirit farm with great familiarity, and the suspicion in his heart slowly disappeared. Even though he could not figure out why the aura had disappeared out of the blue, the person before him was undoubtedly Ling Chuan. "Elder Duan, which spirit farm would you like to visit?" Bailey Hongzhuang asked politely and humbly. Elder Duan casually looked around. "I'm just taking a look around. You may go back first." Bailey Hongzhuang joined her fists and said, "Elder Duan, I'll go back first." "Go." Slowly turning around, Bailey Hongzhuang's face did not let down her guard. This was because she realized that Elder Duan had not left yet, and she was only 100 meters away from Ling Chuan's house. Based on the situation before her, It was obvious that Elder Duan did not leave even after she entered the room. She clearly knew that Ling Chuan had returned to the house earlier, so he should still be in the house now. Ling Chuan would definitely be noticed. Ling Chuan's Duan, if she made any noise, Elder Duan would notice her as well. Bailey Hongzhuang's heart was filled with even more complicated feelings when she sensed the unintentional gaze behind her. She stared at the house that was getting closer and closer, and her body slowly tensed up. She only had one chance left. Once she entered the house, she must not let Ling Chuan make any noise. Otherwise, it would be the beginning of a disaster. Creak. After the door opened, Bailey Hongzhuang's figure flashed, quickly entering the room. Chapter 64-29. Ling Chuan was resting in his room. When he heard the commotion outside the door, he rose to his feet to take a look. However, when he saw the face that was exactly the same as his expression immediately turned into one of horror. "You are..." Before Ling Chuan could finish his sentence, Bailey Hongzhuang stepped forward and covered his mouth with one hand. Ling Chuan reached out his hand in an attempt to resist. He could sense that the other party's powers were not any more powerful than his own. Most importantly, he could smell a familiar scent. He was certain that the person before him was Bailey Hongzhuang. "Don't speak. Once we're discovered, both of us will suffer." Bailey Hongzhuang lowered her voice and said. But Ling Chuan didn't care at all, directly punching Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang quickly blocked the attack with one hand and released Ling Chuan's mouth with her right hand. "You!" In that short moment, Bailey Hongzhuang charged forward and covered Ling Chuan's mouth once again. At the same time, she stuffed a pill into his mouth. In the blink of an eye, Ling Chuan never thought that Bailey Hongzhuang would use this move. When he thought about how Elder Guo's poison had yet to be cured, his heart turned cold. This woman's methods of poisoning were extremely terrifying. Now that she has poisoned him as well, wouldn't it be difficult for him to escape this calamity? At that moment, Ling Chuan decided to fight it out with Bailey Hongzhuang. His life was already at risk anyway. Even if he were to die, he would drag Bailey Hongzhuang down with him. He could not allow Bailey Hongzhuang to escape. Most importantly, the face before him was exactly the same. Even he could not tell the difference. Perhaps after Bailey Hongzhuang kills him, she would use his identity to continue living. A chill ran down his spine at the thought of this. His heart had never felt so cold before. However, just as he was about to resist, he realized that his body had lost all its strength. His face instantly turned pale. Seeing that Ling Chuan had finally stopped, Bailey Hongzhuang let out a sigh of relief. She had finally restrained this guy. Otherwise, Ling Chuan was also at the Radiant Sun realm. If they really fought, even if she won, she would definitely cause a huge commotion and be discovered by Elder Duan. "Are you stupid?" Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Ling Chuan speechlessly. She couldn't tell that this guy was so loyal to the Xianqing sect. "You were involved in my escape earlier. If I appear here again now, do you think they will believe that you are innocent or that you are with me?" Her clear and cold voice was as gentle as water, but it contained a kind of power that made people feel at ease. "I'll tell you the truth. I robbed the resource room today, and Elder Duan of the resource room is outside right now. If he finds out that we're together, you're dead." Ling Chuan looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in horror and felt like he was going crazy. This woman was simply too terrifying. First, she blew up Chang Mei Peak. Elder Guo and Medicine Master Ji had yet to cure their poison. Now, she actually went to the resource room. What kind of place was the resource room? No matter what they obtained, it would be an extremely precious cultivation resource. What he found most unbelievable was that Bailey Hongzhuang was actually able to take things out of the resource room. This was too terrifying. How many people had tried to rob the resource room? None of them had succeeded. Bailey Hongzhuang, an abandoned person, was actually able to do this. It was simply like a dream. Chapter 64-30. "If you don't tell me, I can still share some cultivation resources with you. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows slightly and a faint smile appeared on her lip. Didn't you join this sect for cultivation resources? You're just a disciple planting spiritual fields now. If you want to exchange them for precious cultivation resources, who knows how many acres of fields you'll have to plant. You should think carefully about this debt. Ling Chuan's expression changed slightly. In fact, after discovering that Bailey Hongzhuang didn't kill him immediately, he felt a little relieved. This proved that she didn't intend to kill him and replace him to stay in Xianqing sect. Just like when he was in the water prison, Bailey Hongzhuang only knocked him out and didn't take his life. Elder Duan originally turned around to leave after seeing Ling Chuan enter the house. However, not long after Ling Chuan entered the house, he suddenly heard a commotion from inside. Slowly frowning, Elder Duan slowly walked towards the house. Could it be that the problem was still with Ling Chuan? Bailey Hongzhuang was communicating with Ling Chuan when she suddenly heard light footsteps coming from outside. Her expression also changed. Creak. The door was pushed open and Elder Duan saw the room clearly. Elder Duan, is there a problem with the spiritual fields? Ling Chuan stood up and asked respectfully. Elder Duan looked at Ling Chuan and asked, "What happened just now?" "When I came back just now, I found Qing Yu in my house. I was a little curious about why he was here, but then I remembered that we had an appointment yesterday. There are 2 acres of spiritual fields that are about to mature. He brought the seeds to me today." Ling Chuan smiled. Qing Yu stood up and bowed respectfully. "Greetings, Elder Duan." "I see." Elder Duan nodded. "I have nothing else to do. I'll go back first." It wasn't until Elder Duan's footsteps were getting farther and farther away that Ling Chuan fell to the ground weakly. Bailey Hongzhuang also breathed a sigh of relief. At that moment, cold sweat had also seeped out of her back. If not for the fact that she had met another cultivator in the spiritual field, she would have been completely exposed. "If you promise not to cause any trouble, I'll give you the antidote. How about that?" Bailey Hongzhuang sized up Ling Chuan. The effect of this pill was to make a cultivator lose their cultivation for a short period of time. This was given to them by Granny Hua to save their lives at critical moment. However, this pill also needed to be detoxified. Otherwise, one's cultivation would be affected. She didn't have any bad intentions towards Ling Chuan. Although she didn't claim to be a good person, she didn't intend to drag someone she didn't have any enmity with her. Ling Chuan looked at Bailey Hongzhuang helplessly and nodded dejectedly. He was now tied to the same boat as Bailey Hongzhuang. Even if he was unwilling, there was nothing he could do. Just as she had said, once he was discovered, his ending would not be any better than Bailey Hongzhuang. The sect would not allow such a dangerous possibility to exist. They would rather kill him than let him live. Rather than that, he might as well stay here peacefully. Although he had been punished, at least his life was not in danger. Bailey Hongzhuang handed the antidote to Ling Chuan, and he immediately swallowed it. Chapter 64:31. Bailey Hongzhuang sat down in an unrestrained manner. Her face had returned to its original appearance, and a playful smile appeared on her elegant, lotus-like features. "I don't want to do anything. If Guo Sheng had not captured me and brought me here, I would have been happy and carefree in the abandoned immortal forest." Ling Chuan stared suspiciously at Bailey Hongzhuang. "Did you really kill Guo Shaojie? Would you believe me if I told you that I didn't kill him?" Bailey Hongzhuang asked in return. Ling Chuan's face was filled with suspicion. Clearly, he did not believe her. Elder Guo's anger was not fake. If it had not been for Guo Shaojie's incident, he would not have done such a thing. Bailey Hongzhuang shrugged when she noticed Ling Chuan's expression. "Anyway, I didn't kill him. It's up to you whether you believe me or not." Ling Chuan began to believe her when he saw Bailey Hongzhuang's calm expression. After all, based on Bailey Hongzhuang's current situation, it would not be a big deal even if she were to admit it. Besides, he and she were already in the same boat. He would never tell on her. "Master, how are you?" Xiao Hei had been worried ever since it had hidden itself in the chaos ring. It did not know if Elder Duan had discovered its master. However, it did not dare to rush out, so it could only wait for the result inside. Every minute and second was extremely unbearable for it. It was so worried that it was about to go crazy. "Don't worry, everything's fine now." Just as Xiao Hei was at a loss for what to do, Bailey Hongzhuang's gentle voice chimed in. Xiao Hei heaved a sigh of relief when it heard this heavenly voice. It lay limply on the ground and felt completely at ease. Xiao Hei then tossed the chaos ring into the air. However, it was completely stunned when it saw Ling Chuan. "Master, he. Ling Chuan looked at Xiao Hei when he heard that. He was a little surprised when he saw how soft and cute it was. "Why are you so small?" Xiao Hei's expression changed slightly. She looked at Ling Chuan in confusion, then looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. "Master, this." Bailey Hongzhuang patted Xiao Hei's little head and smiled faintly. "Don't worry, we're on the same side now." Xiao Hei looked at Ling Chuan in surprise. Although she didn't understand what was going on, it was obvious that the situation was no longer dangerous. "What did you get from the resource room?" Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Xiao Hei with a smile. Although the previous scene was very dangerous, it was still worth it. "Master, I listened to you and couldn't be greedy, so I didn't stay in there for long. I only took a few things and came out." Ling Chuan was also very curious. He knew very well how many treasures there were in the resource room. Every time he went to collect cultivation resources, he couldn't help but go and take a look. However, those precious cultivation resources were simply too expensive to exchange for point. Even when he was guarding the water prison, it was an astronomical figure. Now that he was being punished to plant the spirit farm, he had basically given up on this idea. However, these things that they thought were impossible to obtain had been taken back by Bailey Hongzhuang just like that. This was really infuriating. This. Xiao Hei mumbled to herself as she took out the item that she had retrieved from the resource room. 10,000-year-old ice ginseng. Chapter 6432. Although the 10,000-year-old ice ginseng was usually kept in the resource room, everyone knew that it was just there for show. It was impossible to exchange for it. The 10,000-year-old ice ginseng was extremely precious. Even if everyone wanted to exchange for it, they would only exchange for the 10,000-year-old ice ginseng's whiskers. Even if it was just a whisker, the number of points required was extremely shocking. However, this guy actually took out the entire 10,000-year-old ice ginseng? At that moment, Ling Chuan also understood why Elder Duan's expression was so terrifying. If it were him, he would also be anxious to death after losing such an important treasure. He probably wouldn't be able to explain it to the sect leader. He recalled that Xiao Hei said that Bailey Hongzhuang reminded it not to be greedy. Was this not greedy? Putting everything else aside, just this 10,000-year-old ice ginseng alone was worth everything. Just as Ling Chuan was thinking, Xiao Hei didn't stop moving. It took out the treasures one by one. In fact, it didn't know the uses of many heaven and earth treasures. It just looked at the ones that required the most points and took them back. "I only took a total of 5 items. Xiao Hei pursed its lips. There wasn't enough time, and it affected its performance. When it left, it looked at the many items in the resource room and was reluctant to part with them. How great would it be if it could take all of these items away? Ling Chuan looked at the 5 items in front of him. Each of them was extremely precious. The other 4 items weren't much worse than the 10,000-year-old ice ginseng. These things were things that they had been dreaming about even in their dreams. Not only did Xiao Hei bring back so many items, but it still felt that the items were too little. "Isn't your appetite a little too big?" Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the 5 items in front of her and her eyes lit up. She studied medicine with her mother-in-law all day long and had some understanding of these treasures. Therefore, when Xiao Hei took them out, she knew the value of these items. Xiao He, you have a good eye. These things are all very good, Bailey Hongzhuang praised with a smile. Xiao He, who was feeling a little regretful at first, felt her gloominess disappear after hearing her master's praise. Her eyes lit up with anticipation as she asked, "Really?" Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. "Of course it's true. Even your mother-in-law would praise you if she saw these things, let alone me." Xiao He giggled at the side. Being praised by his master was the happiest thing in his life. "Ling Chuan, which one do you like?" Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Ling Chuan. If it wasn't for Ling Chuan, she would have been exposed. Naturally, none of these things would belong to her. Since she said that she would give Ling Chuan a share, she naturally wouldn't go back on her words. As Bailey Hongzhuang spoke, Ling Chuan was stunned. Then, a look of disbelief surfaced in his eyes. His voice trembled with excitement as he asked, "You're saying that I can choose one item from here?" "Of course." Bailey Hongzhuang smiled gently. Her eyes were as bright as stars. "Choose for yourself." Ling Chuan felt an indescribable sense of happiness spread through his heart. Usually, it would be an extravagant hope to be able to obtain even a small portion of these items. Now, he could actually obtain the entire set. Chapter 64-33. I'll take this. Ling Chuan pointed to the purple lotus spirit leaf at the side. The most precious of all was the 10,000-year-old ice ginseng. He naturally couldn't take it away directly. However, the purple lotus spirit leaf was also an extremely precious treasure. Countless cultivators yearned to have it. "All right," Bailey Hongzhuang nodded and handed the purple lotus spirit leaf to Ling Chuan with a faint smile. Ling Chuan still felt like he was in a dream when he received the purple lotus spirit leaf. He only felt that everything in front of him was too unreal. "Then what are you going to do next?" After carefully putting away the purple lotus spirit leaf, Ling Chuan asked seriously. At this moment, he no longer had any hostility towards Bailey Hongzhuang. In fact, it was Elder Guo who made the first move. Bailey Hongzhuang was just responding passively from the beginning to the end. Although he had only known Bailey Hongzhuang for a short time, in this short period of time, he already knew that the other party was a very generous and loyal person. If it was an ordinary person, even if they were good brothers, they would not care about feelings in the face of such a treasure. However, Bailey Hongzhuang gave such a precious treasure to him just because she felt guilty. How many people could do this? Bailey Hongzhuang's face revealed a thoughtful expression. At present, she had not thought of a way to leave. Now that the entire Xian Qing sect is looking for me, it won't be easy for me to leave. Bailey Hongzhuang was a little helpless. She also knew that every day she stayed here, Beichen and the rest would be more worried. If her judgment was correct, Beichen and the rest should be near the immortal region soon. Guosheng was definitely not a good person. Even if he had not been cured, the plan must have been set up. Once Beichen and the rest came, there would be trouble. Do you know what danger it is for abandoned people to barge into the immortal region without an identity card? Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly asked. Ling Chuan's expression turned cold. If they barge into the immortal region, it will be dangerous. The restriction on the entrance to the immortal domain was extremely powerful. As long as one was not a cultivator from the immortal domain, it would be impossible to break through. I heard that there was once an abandoned person who wanted to barge in directly, but he was destroyed by the restrictive spell. So scary? Bailey Hongzhuang was slightly taken aback. Although she had already guessed that it would be difficult to enter the immortal domain, the degree of difficulty seemed to be even more terrifying than she had imagined. Anyway, it's really scary to barge in. Could it be that your friend is planning to save you? Ling Chuan was also very smart. Just by looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's expression, he had already guessed it. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded, her pretty face filled with worry. It seems like I really have to think of a way to leave this place. Right now, everyone is looking for you. Even if you know how to disguise yourself, I'm afraid it will be very difficult for you to leave. Ling Chuan said with difficulty. That's right, can you take Xiao He with you and leave? Bailey Hongzhuang pointed at the extremely small Xiao He. Ling Chuan glanced at Xiao He and nodded. Right now, many people are guarding outside the sect. Even if I go, it won't be strange. It won't be difficult to take it out, but what's the use of it? You won't be able to leave. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled up. You don't have to worry about that. As long as you can take Xiao He with you, it'll be fine. Chapter 64-34. Even though Ling Chuan's heart was full of doubts, looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's confident appearance, he inexplicably felt at ease. This woman's ability was obviously stronger than all of them thought. In fact, there was no one else who could hide in Xianqing sect for so long without being discovered except for Bailey Hongzhuang. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang and Ling Chuan were talking, Xianqing sect was in an uproar. When the disciples who planted the spirit fruits in the spirit fields returned, they found that all the fruits and vegetables they planted had been plucked. What should we do? How could these fruits and vegetables be plucked out of nowhere? How should I explain this? The fruits in your spirit fields are gone too? All the ripe fruits in my spirit fields are gone. This is really over. Ah, it's over, it's over. Wails continued to resound, but after everyone found out that it wasn't only their spirit fields that were stolen, they felt more at ease. In this way, even if they were punished, it wouldn't be just one person. In the meeting hall, Xianqing sect's sect master listened to the elder's report with a livid expression. In that case, Bailey Hongzhuang is still in our Xianqing sect and has taken away all the ripe fruits and vegetables in the spirit fields? Sect master, that's true. The great elder braced himself and replied. Even though he was so far away, he could clearly feel the sect master's low pressure. So, are you all a bunch of trash? The sect master flew into a rage. How many days has it been since the incident in the water prison? You can't even find an abandoned person. All the elders' hearts trembled. They lowered their heads and didn't dare to say anything. They just gave the order to a group of disciples. After all, she was just an abandoned person. They only felt that there was no need for them to do anything. However, they didn't expect Bailey Hongzhuang to be so cunning. So many disciples collectively searched for her, but they couldn't find her. She even dared to take away the fruits in the spirit field. Sect master, we will definitely speed up and find Bailey Hongzhuang. Abandoned people are still abandoned people. Although the things in the spirit fields are a bit of a pity, they aren't very important things. Since she cares so much about these petty profits, we can also pay more attention in this regard. The matter of the spiritual field is indeed small, but she's slapping the face of our Xianqing sect. The sect leader was still angry. An abandoned person has already caused chaos in our Xianqing sect. What will others think of our Xianqing sect? What a joke. At that moment, Elder Duan arrived. Elder Duan, why are you only here now? One of the elders asked. Elder Duan's expression was a little ugly as he looked nervously at the sect leader. He was constantly thinking about how he should say this. Elder Duan, have you heard about the theft of the spirit fields? Fortunately, this woman's vision is rather low. She only knows how to steal the spiritual fields. The good stuff is all in the resource room. Another elder chuckled and said, How powerful are the guards of the resource room? How could she possibly break in? Elder Duan, who was already very conflicted, looked even uglier after hearing everyone's words. These guys seemed to have already expected something would happen and touched on the pot that didn't boil. The sect master didn't care too much at first, but when he noticed Elder Duan's expression, his eyes gradually changed. Chapter 64-35. As soon as the sect leader finished speaking, everyone present was stunned and turned to look at Elder Duan. Elder Duan felt an immense pressure when he was faced with the puzzled gazes. His back was soon drenched in cold sweat. 5 treasures had been stolen from the resource room this time, and they were the most precious top-grade treasures. He had already searched the surroundings as fast as he could, but he did not find anyone. Therefore, he could only take on this big trouble himself. Something has indeed happened in the resource room. Elder Duan lowered his head and said in shame. The entire meeting hall fell silent as soon as he said that. It was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. Numerous astonished and shocked gazes landed on Elder Duan. The usually calm elders no longer cared about their image at this moment, and all of them widened their eyes. Elder Duan, is what you said true? The resource room has always been guarded very strictly. I heard that Bailey Hongzhuang has not even broken through to the glorious Sun State. How could she have possibly stolen something right under your nose? Elder Duan felt even more humiliated when he was faced with the crowd's questions. He could not understand why he had been so obsessed today that he had followed the group of disciples to check out the situation out of curiosity. Furthermore, he could not understand how Bailey Hongzhuang, an abandoned person who had never seen the world, could have managed to grasp the timing so well. She had not been greedy when faced with so many treasures and had escaped immediately after taking some. It sounded simple, but most cultivators would not be able to do that. Elder Duan, what's going on? The sect leader regained his rationality in his anger. It was useless to be angry now. Most importantly, he was curious about how Bailey Hongzhuang had managed to do that. Even the disciples in their sect could not have done something like that. Under the sect leader's pressurizing gaze, Elder Duan slowly explained everything that had happened. I never thought that something like this would happen after leaving for such a short while. Elder Duan felt ashamed and guilty. He had been guarding the resource room for so many years, and this was the first time something like this had happened. Just thinking about it made him feel gloomy. However, after everyone heard all this, their hearts became even more complicated. From the looks of it, this Bailey Hongzhuang is quite smart. The sect leader had a complicated look on his face. Initially, he had treated her as a small fry and did not take her to heart. However, after understanding everything that Bailey Hongzhuang had done, he began to feel that this woman had many shining points. If it was their sect's disciples who were captured, it would be impossible for them to do this. Not to mention breaking into the resource room, it was impossible not to be discovered. However, Bailey Hongzhuang acted as if it was nothing and was as carefree as a fish swimming in the water. All the elders nodded. In fact, they had been thinking about this for the past 2 days. If their disciples also had such strength, then they would definitely be able to obtain first place in the sect competition. Such an outstanding disciple was actually an abandoned person. It was simply a reckless waste of God's gift. This girl is indeed very powerful. If not, Elder Guo's grandson would not have fallen in her hands. The first elder said in a deep voice. Chapter 64:36. In response to the head, Elder Guo's life has been saved, but his paralysis problem is very serious. I specifically went to inquire before coming, and it said that he's still in the process of detoxifying the poison. He already has a direction, and I believe that he should be able to detoxify the poison in a short period of time. Second elder spoke. The head nodded slightly. That's good. After a long while, the sect head finally spoke. No matter if that Bailey Hongzhuang has 3 heads and 6 arms or what, we must find her today. We absolutely can't let her continue to cause trouble like this. Everyone's hearts trembled as soon as these words were spoken, and they all nodded in agreement. A trace of complexity surfaced in his dark eyes as the head sighed faintly. He'd originally thought that Bailey Hongzhuang was a promising talent. Although he was very displeased by what he'd done, he'd always cherished geniuses. However, the enmity between Elder Guo and Bailey Hongzhuang ran so deep that if he left Bailey Hongzhuang behind, he'd be letting Elder Guo down. Between the two, Elder Guo was naturally more important. The various elders were all smart people. Not to mention the head, even they had thoughts of cherishing talent. If such an intelligent girl were to stay in the Xianqing sect, she'd likely quickly become the most outstanding disciple in the inner sect. If it wasn't for the first elder's words reminding the head, the elders would have already spoken these words. The Hall of Healing. The Hall of Healing was undoubtedly bustling with activity. Many alchemists were shuttling back and forth inside, all of them looking very distressed. They were all trying their best to think of how to detoxify this poison. This poison is truly strange. We've already tried many methods. Even though it's been alleviated somewhat, we're still unable to completely detoxify it. In my opinion, Bailey Hongzhuang's master must be an expert. This kind of poison isn't something that an ordinary alchemist can concoct. Perhaps it's a very powerful poison master. I also think so. Elder Guo is usually so arrogant, but this time he's really capsized in the gutter. When the head arrived at the Hall of Healing and saw this scene, his already irritated heart became even more irritated when he heard these words. Look at what you've done. The sect leader looked at Guo Xing angrily. In fact, he had heard of Guo Xing's actions over the years. If he didn't cause any big trouble, it wouldn't be a big deal, but he didn't expect that he would cause such a troublesome matter. Hasn't Guo Xiaojie caused enough trouble over the years? Now you've caused even more trouble than him. Sensing the sect master's terrifying rage, Guo Xing's face paled. He wanted to explain, but his body was paralyzed and he couldn't even say a word. He could only stare anxiously. You can think about how to apologize after you recover. The sect master flicked his sleeve and said, Since Chang Mei Peak has already disappeared, you don't have to be the main elder anymore. Hearing this, Guo Xing's heart also panicked. He had been a main elder for so many years and had long since gotten used to all of this. Now that he was stripped of his status as the main elder, how could he still have the face to see others? Wu Wu, however, no matter how hard Guo Xing tried to speak, he could only produce a blurry silhouette. He could not utter a single word. Chapter 64-37. It's really blown up now. Ling Chuan stared at Bailey Hongzhuang in shock. Even though he already knew that Bailey Hongzhuang had robbed the resource room, he also knew that it would be very scary if this matter were to blow up. However, he never thought that Bailey Hongzhuang would also rob the spirit fields as well. Why did you rob so many spirit fields, but you didn't do anything to mine? I didn't even do anything to this area. I've already tricked you previously, so I can't keep tricking you. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. Previously, Ling Chuan had already caught the attention of the elders because of the water prison incident. If the spirit fields were to be robbed, it would be the second time he had caught everyone's attention. This way, Ling Chuan would most likely be the center of attention. Hence, it wasn't just Ling Chuan's spirit fields that she didn't do anything to this area. If all the other spirit fields were to be robbed and only Ling Chuan's spirit fields remained unscathed, wouldn't that be akin to revealing 300 taels of silver here? Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Ling Chuan chuckled softly. I didn't think that you would be so thoughtful. It's all right. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was casual. Can you take Xiao He and leave now? Ling Chuan thought for a moment before nodding. The entire sect is in a mess now. The sect master has ordered us to find you today, so I think that we really have to hurry up. I'll try to see if I can take this opportunity to send Xiao He out. Otherwise, once the elders and the sect master come to investigate, I'm afraid that you won't be able to escape no matter how good your disguise is. Our sect master is very powerful, so we definitely can't take this risk. Looking at Ling Chuan's dignified appearance, Bailey Hongzhuang also understood. Alright, let's give it a try now. But if I take Xiao He out, what about you? Ling Chuan looked at Bailey Hongzhuang worriedly. It's not safe for you to stay here. Don't worry about me. Bailey Hongzhuang waved her hand. As long as I can bring Xiao He back, I can return. Alright then. As Ling Chuan walked out of the house, Bailey Hongzhuang immediately entered the chaos ring. Xiao He hid the chaos ring in her hair and slowly walked out of the house. Ling Chuan stretched out his hand and said, Come on up. Xiao He leaped up Ling Chuan's arm and ran into his arms. Her white fur and white clothes blended together, and no one noticed her. After looking around, Ling Chuan quickly rushed towards the main gate of the sect. Normally, there would always be restrictions placed on the main gate of the sect. If he wanted to leave, he would need the permission of the elders. However, because the recent commotion was too big, many disciples were already waiting outside the gate. As long as he took the opportunity to blend in with these disciples, he would be able to take the opportunity to release Xiao He. As for the rest, he could not do it for the time being. Along the way, Ling Chuan found that almost everyone was talking about the theft of the resource room. It was clearly an extremely daring thing to do, but now everyone only felt that Bailey Hongzhuang was really too powerful. Her ability was even stronger than that of the inner disciples. She could be said to be the role model of the inner disciples. Seeing that the elders had not appeared, Ling Chuan heaved a sigh of relief. At least he still had a chance. As he got closer and closer to the main gate, he gradually relaxed. As long as he could release Xiao He, that would be enough. At this moment, a voice suddenly sounded. "Greetings, Sect Master." "Greetings, Sect Master." Chapter 64-38. Ling Chuan's heart skipped a beat. He was so unlucky to meet the Sect Master as soon as he arrived. As soon as he turned around, sure enough, the Sect Master's figure appeared in his line of sight. However, compared to his usual indifference, the Sect Master had a hint of anger. The serious aura exuding from his body made people not dare to approach him at all. "Greetings, Sect Master." Ling Chuan bowed. The Sect Master's gaze swept across the group of disciples in front of him. Elder Daxiang said beside him, "Sect Master, these disciples are guarding outside the gate to prevent Bailey Hongzhuang from leaving. Now, Bailey Hongzhuang may have disguised herself as anyone from our Xian Qing sect. Before I came, did any disciples leave here?" Hearing this, all the disciples were shocked. They finally understood why Bailey Hongzhuang had not been discovered. Everyone couldn't help but look around. They didn't know if Bailey Hongzhuang would be standing beside them. Now, the Great Elder and I will confirm the aura of each disciple one by one. All the disciples will gather to one side. The disciples who have been confirmed will stand on the other side to prevent others from taking advantage of the situation. Ling Chuan's heart trembled. He never thought that the Sect Master would make such a decision. It was a huge project to screen all the disciples one by one. It could be seen that Bailey Hongzhuang's actions had really angered the Sect Master. Usually, the Sect Master would rarely appear, let alone check the aura of the disciples one by one. Bailey Hongzhuang was not here, but under such a check, the existence of Bailey Hongzhuang would be discovered sooner or later. Not only that, Xiao He was still in his arms. If the Sect Master found out, what should he do? This place was clearly only a few steps away from the door, but he was stopped here. At the moment, he couldn't let Xiao He leave. His every move was under the attention of the people around him. The slightest movement would be noticed. The Sect Master's expression was deep. According to his judgment, the reason why Bailey Hongzhuang hadn't been recognized for so long was most likely because she had taken the appearance-changing pill. This pill was expensive, but it was also very useful. Even the ordinary elders in the sect might not be able to judge it. Logically speaking, it was impossible for an abandoned person to have this kind of pill. However, thinking about how Bailey Hongzhuang poisoned Elder Gua, it could be seen that she must know a very strong pharmacist, so it was not surprising that she had this kind of pill. The Sect Master and the Great Elder didn't delay. How many disciples in the entire Xian Qing sect? Relying on their judgment, this was definitely a huge task. By the Sect Masters of the Sect Masters of Disciples. One by one, the disciples were locked on by the head of the sect. Only after they were allowed to pass to the other side did they feel relieved. They curiously looked at the disciples waiting to be checked on the other side, wanting to know if Bailey Hongzhuang would be in the crowd. Ling Chuan's palms were already sweating and his body was tense. Even if he tried his best to not be nervous, he couldn't do it at all. The sect master must know about Xiao Hei's existence. Once he was discovered, he would be finished. While waiting nervously, the sect master's footsteps also stopped in front of Ling Chuan. Are you nervous? The sect master's voice slowly sounded. Ling Chuan was shocked. Everyone's eyes focused on him at this moment.